I'm Blue Bailey.
And I'm Dexter DeNovo, and this is Reading is Fundamental,
The show where we talk about news in entertainment law.
Yes, that leather daddy
And that drag queen
are both licensed California attorneys.
We celebrate queerness,
Sex positivity,
and reading bitches for filth.
And with that being said,
The library is now open.
Officially.
The library is open.
Because reading is what? Fundamental.
The information on this podcast is for general information purposes only. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as legal advice for any individual, case, or situation. This information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship. Sorry about it.
What?
Fundamental.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reading is Fundamental. I'm Dexter DeNovo.
And I am Blue Bailey, and we are back in our fancy Burbank recording studio.
Back in Burbank.
Brought to you by Daddy Fleshbot.
Yes, thank you, Fleshbot. We've had a crazy month,
It's
the
been
two of
busy.
us.
It's been busy.
Like in our own respective ways. So it's like, and then we really haven't talked that much. I mean, we have seen each other, but like it's been in passing.
Yeah, I prefer it that way.
She's like, I really try not to be near you as much as possible.
It's accurate.
Oh my God, work. Okay, well, let's start with IML because we both went to IML.
We did. It was your first time.
It was my first IML.
is International Mr. Leather. It was probably my 10th time there. Your first time. It took you a lot of convincing to go.
It took a lot of convincing to get me to go because I know it's a big event. Like, it's lots of people and lots of things going on and blah, blah, blah. And I am not a type of person that is, like, gonna go out and, like, say hi to everybody. And I think it's a different experience because you know pretty much everybody there.
Everyone, yeah.
Like, everybody there. So it's like, okay, you go and it's like a kiki with everybody you know. And me, I'm like, I don't know anybody. But I did branch out and I met a whole bunch of people.
You did. And it wasn't even, I didn't even get to see that many people because I was sick most of the time.
I was like, we're going to get that. You were sick pretty much the whole time.
Pretty much the whole time.
Pretty much the whole time.
Like, I went to a fisting party on Thursday, and in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have gone to that.
Did you get everybody else sick?
I don't know.
No, you didn't get anybody else sick because you were like really.
I was hanging with you on.
You were hanging out with me and everybody else, and like you didn't get anybody sick.
I did make it to Roscoe's with you.
You did. We went to Roscoe's. Oh my gosh! So I wouldn't say that I watch Roscoe's every week, but I do love the Roscoe's recap show that they do with Naysha Lopez and Caramel and
Batty
Davis. So I love watching it. We got to go see it.
We got to ask a legal question about All-Stars in the Fame Games.
You did. You asked a legal question.
You were too afraid to ask a question.
No, I was going to ask, what was I going to ask? And then the other person.
Oh, you were going to ask what Darian's reads would have been.
Yes.
Someone else asked it.
Because Darian was like, oh, if I had the chance to read it, I'm like, okay, well, what would your reads have been? But somebody else already asked it. But
I
you
got
asked.
to ask whether WoW had control over what the girls post on social media. Because we reviewed was it the season 14 contract?
It might have been the season 15 contract.
And the season 14 or 15, either way, the current contract of Drag Race pretty much requires WoW to approve anything that the girls post online. And we thought that maybe that was the same for All-Stars and that WoW was really controlling what these girls were allowed to post or not post for the Fame Games. And Naysha had a really good response.
Yeah, Naysha was just like, oh, no, they're like letting us do whatever. Like they just kind of told us to do whatever we want.
Yeah, she said she wouldn't have gone back if they controlled her social media. But she did have thoughts that it was a cheap way to get the girls to participate and promote the show without actually paying the girls.
I mean, the twist we like, right? Because it's like, okay, we finally get to see like all these runways. We probably would have seen them on Instagram anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like at least these runways are getting airtime, like all of this money time that they spend on these looks are getting some airtime, so that's really good. But I think that it was nice in like concept, and now that we've seen it a couple times, it's like, oh. Like, it's really an afterthought. It's like at the very end of Untucked.
It gets you to watch it Untucked, though.
Fair.
Yeah. I was listening to Race Chaser. Mila was saying it also allows the girls to now write off these dresses as tax deductions.
Because they were on TV.
Because they're on TV. And I'm curious to know, like, what the exact distinction is. Like, if you purchase an outfit and did a photo shoot to promote your brand, wouldn't that in general be a tax write-off, or
I mean, you're honestly way better at tax things than I am.
I hire someone to be better
Yeah,
at tax
yeah,
things.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
personally know.
But I think it's just because like it. If you didn't get to air the runway, then it wouldn't ever show up on television. So unless and until you use that somewhere, you know what I mean, out, then it's like, oh, you just have this thing, you didn't really like use it. You know what I mean? So maybe if you use it for a performance or something later, but you can't until the episode airs.
Yeah, I'm just curious what that TV distinction is, because I've been told for like adult entertainment, you get a haircut, I guess for the shoot or like the appearance, and you're able to write it off.
Yeah. I've been thinking about like how are they filming the Fame Games? I think they're just keeping all the girls there, and then like, oh, it's runway day, show up for your 2 minutes that you're on the runway.
That was actually one of the spelunking questions that Alaska Willem answered. In addition to
Oh my God, they answered my question.
that you wrote in.
Yes, with my photos from IML.
Yeah, tell us more about it. What was your question?
You really want to put me on blast with this? No, I asked for advice about, like, if you were moving to a new city, what you should do to kind of get acquainted with the new area and not kind of seem like you're trampling on people's, turf and, like, wanting to steal all their gigs and stuff. Yeah, we don't like turfs.
I love you. I want to highlight you and your appearance or your question's appearance
Thank you.
Race Chaser.
On Race Chaser.
If I wanted to drag you, I'd ask why you're only wearing 9 nails right now.
God damn it.
You knew it was
See,
coming.
I knew it was coming. These nails are not staying on.
They're not.
And they're driving me insane.
See, I was smart.
And this
I
one
wore
just
gloves
came off
today.
right before we started, and you had to read me for the 9 nails.
You knew it was coming.
This one's gone. I'm so sorry. God damn it. I hate you. Just like, actually, I'm not even going to say that. You wrote down RuPaul's speech. What do you mean?
Oh my God. So I always say that I love RuPaul because she bakes therapy and like recovery wisdom into the show.
Yeah.
And I wrote the speech that she gave to like Kahan and the girls, which she called them all back in and was like, you shouldn't be leaving the show. Facts aren't feelings. Like, don't let your feelings get in the way of your long-term goals.
This was the last episode that just happened.
Yes, which won't be the last episode by the time.
Yeah. I don't know what number it is. But after Heidi had left, and then Kahana was about to be like, I'm going to be gone, then she comes in and says that. So do you think that Heidi would have stayed if she'd done the same thing for Heidi?
I don't know. I think Heidi came into the show knowing that she was going to leave at a certain point.
Really?
I think that was her
Interesting.
tactic, to try to have
She was gonna
like,
do
a
Ben de la
Ben
Creme.
Creme
God damn
type
it.
status, and I don't respect it.
I don't
or
like
appreciate
that
it.
either. It's that's like the one talking point that everybody's talking about right now is like, oh, should Heidi have left and blah 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 blah. And there's two answers. You know, most of them are like, oh, her mental health is important, blah 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 blah.
Eye roll.
Or this is the biggest drag stage. You should just kind of like figure it out and get through it, and like, you know what I mean?
Like, you're going on to All Stars. You know there's shenanigans. You know there's games, and you're on a reality TV show. You know that they're gonna bend the scenario and your words against you.
I mean, the tea that I had seen before the show was that she was mad because it was like very heavily produced for Jimbo, but I don't know. It's
Still,
I mean,
you know the
still,
All-Stars
you
are
might as well
produced.
just go get your TV.
Yeah.
Okay, really quick drag ban update before we move on to our mini. There's just an update for the Tennessee statute that it has been temporarily suspended by a federal judge in the state of Tennessee. So that just means it's not going into effect for right now. And then we have to see. I'm sure it's going to get appealed and there's going to be more decisions for it. But for now, that is the state of the matter. It's not effective. It's stopped before it went in. So.
But that's just Tennessee. That's not
just
the other
Tennessee.
drag ban. It's not drag bans in general.
No,
it's just
and
this
like
one specific one.
Yes, and literally like as of yesterday, Texas just signed their drag ban.
Yay, Texas.
So, yay, great.
On more positive news, look at the cup my sister made me. She took like this little artist photo that someone made that says "cum dump" on it, and I told her that I would drink from this cup on the podcast.
Wow.
So, thank you, Taylor.
This is like why, as soon as I started meeting your family, I'm like, oh my God, of course you are the child
They're
of your
coming
family.
this week for San Francisco Pride. You get to meet them.
Yay, get to see Taylor again.
Oh, you've already met Taylor.
Yeah,
Yes.
we did a Drag Race finale
did.
taping with her
We
in
did.
Vegas. Yes, but the more I meet your family, I'm like, your uncle's like, your uncle like makes leather. Like,
My uncle makes leather.
I thought your uncle makes like leather vests.
No. Whose
Oh.
family are you meeting?
Or does he make harnesses?
I don't think so.
Okay, never mind. We're not talking about your family anymore. We're talking about somebody else's family. But
Yeah.
now I understand.
So what are our mini and our main challenges today?
Mini
Or
in our main
challenges?
today. Well, the mini has to do with a drag permit that was denied.
More
in,
drag?
More drag.
I'm sick of
girl.
it.
I am too. That was denied in St. George, Utah, and then we'll get into this Ed Sheeran case afterward. But do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened in St. George?
Yeah, so a local drag organization was trying to put on, I think, a fundraiser. It was a family-friendly kind of nonprofit fundraising event, and they were applying to get a permit, and they were denied that permit by the city. And they were denied on the basis that they were advertising the show while the permit application was still in process, which on its face kind of sounds legit.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not going to follow the rules, you shouldn't get your permit.
Yes.
The issue in this case, or in this instance, is that the city was allowing other organizations that were not queer that were also promoting the event beforehand to get the permits.
So the thing that's like shady boots about this is the enforcement of it. So it's like, okay, the rule we're not mad about. Like, okay, we should be knowing that you shouldn't be advertising it for, but it's like, who is enforcing this and who is it getting enforced against? And at this point, it's getting enforced against these people who are trying to put a drag show on, or this like family-friendly drag at a park event, putting it on, and they're not doing it for the same like other city-sponsored events or anything like that. I think, well, I'll say the ACLU called it an obscure local rule, and it puts a new moratorium on special events afterward. So it's like afterward, nobody can apply for any more special events. If you got denied once, you can't apply for another 90 days. So this person like wasn't able to like redo their application or anything
In time for the actual event.
in time for
Because
the
there was
actual
a-
event.
But I also read that the city was allowing events that have previously occurred to kind of, there was a loophole that they could continue to apply.
This is the thing that I was thinking about with this is, yes, we can do enforcement of the rule, right? It's like, okay, cool. But like, they could also strategically deny the application till like the day before. You know what I mean? So it's like, then you couldn't advertise it. So it's like, let's say it's like on July 30th or something,
Yep.
and they're like, oh, we're processing your application and blah, 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 like it's coming. And then you can't advertise it until the time. And then they give it on July 29th. And it's like, okay, well, in effect, the thing's not happening. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like you didn't advertise it. So it's like they can use this rule shady boots way.
Yeah, and I'm also curious, like, what does advertising mean?
Oh, yeah, fair.
To what extent? Is it putting flyers up around the city? Is it creating a Facebook event? Is it a, what do they give out for weddings? Like, save the date, remember the date?
Save the dates.
Or is it simply just like having a website where maybe you've had a similar event in the past that matches this?
Yep. So, like, what counts as the advertising? They really weren't clear about that. I think that's why the ACLU called it an obscure legal rule, because it's like there's no really like definition of what it is, and it's up to the people who are enforcing it, like what each of
I
these
know
means.
it when I see it all over again.
Exactly. And I think that like, oh, like if they can't advertise it, then it's like, well, can they text people and tell them about it? You know what I mean? Is that
I didn't
considered
even
advertising?
think about that. I
You
was
know what
just
I mean?
thinking, yeah.
I mean, to me, advertisement would be like posting a bill or like posting like a poster or something like that, or a Facebook event or something like that. But if you just like text people, hey, this is going to be happening, and this is like whole text thread that's like being sent to everybody, does that count?
Yeah, I mean, when it's up to their discretion, who knows?
So the claim is that they're violating the First and 14th Amendment. The First Amendment
I remember the first one. That's freedom of speech.
Yes.
What's the 14th one?
Freedom of speech, which includes the right to assemble. So it's like, this is that one.
Yep. I guess it could be the right to assemble, the right to advertise, the right to promote. It's less protected speech when it's commercial, but it's still all in the same family.
Yes. And then the 14th Amendment is equal protection under the law.
And that's where the enforcement comes in.
Yes. Yes. Because it's like, we are not enforcing this equally against all people. So it should be equal enforcement, equal protection under the law. And then, so like when they're doing this, they're trying to file for a preliminary injunction to stop them from doing what they're doing.
them being the city.
Oh, sorry. Stop the city from doing what they're doing. So I guess I'm trying to like get out, like explain what a preliminary injunction is.
It's not a permanent injunction. So a preliminary injunction is when there is an immediate harm that is likely to happen, and when you go into the court and ask the court to do something. Usually it's an action for one party to do something or to not do something. And in this case, the organization hosting the drag show is asking the court to step in to stop the city
From stopping them.
Which
is like weird to think about.
That's double negative. So
Yeah.
they're asking the city to grant the permit.
Yes. They're asking the court to make them grant the permit.
Correct.
Yes. But it's like they
got
already
there.
denied it. So it's like we're trying to make them not deny it.
Yeah.
But with preliminary injunctions, it's like you said, it has to show harm like right away.
Immediate harm.
Immediate harm. It has to, like, one of the standards that the court is looking for is to say, like, it has to be immediate harm to the people. And I mean, would you say that there's immediate harm here?
Yeah, I mean, if the event like was not in the window where he could reapply, and they needed the denial to be reversed immediately for the event to occur on schedule. Yeah, I would say that would qualify.
Would it be harmful for them not to have the event? Like, what's the consequence of them like being like, oh, okay, well, we shouldn't. Yes, you're like harmed, but if this event doesn't happen, you're not gonna die. Like,
I mean, to me, that kind of like goes into like the time, place, and like manner implications of the First Amendment, where if you block speech from happening, you have to like allow an opportunity for the speech to happen somewhere else. And if the city's not allowing that opportunity, they're not giving like another date or another time and location, then I think it is causing a harm.
oh my god, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
You passed the
I
bar.
remember things. I did
Yes,
pass the
and you passed the
bar.
bar. I literally didn't even think about the time, place, and manner thing, but that's totally right.
I forgot. Oh, you know where we were at? So Sean and I were at LA Pride. No, it's relatable. For Mariah Carey, who was horrible. But we were walking around the venue to get our Uber, and we saw an area that was a free speech area
Yeah.
that was about like 20 feet away from the park, and like there were signs that said this is a designated free speech area for people to say and do whatever they want.
Yes.
So if you're going to restrict it from happening in the venue, or if you're going to restrict a drag event from happening at a certain time and location, you can't do
Yes.
it without offering an alternative.
That is constitutional law. If they like are restricting it in a certain place, they need to be able to give a certain other place where speech can be exhibited, as it were. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Anything else about this though?
Nope, that's all I remember.
Okay, well, this is like St. George, Utah. I love the desert, and it's in the desert, but there's a lot of problematic things going on in Utah right now, unfortunately. We'll talk in a couple weeks about a ban that they have on pornography there.
Yeah, it seems like Utah just in general is very anti-queer people lately, anti-sexual freedom.
I mean, who isn't these days?
Yeah.
Do you want to get into our main topic?
What is our main topic?
Our main topic is the Ed Sheeran litigation, music copyright litigation. So, let me start. I'm going to try and withhold and hold back
Okay.
on this. But let me tell you, my journey. I went to law school thinking, I was a teacher, right? I was a music teacher. So I was like, I went to law school thinking, oh, I'm going to like do youth law and help all these kids that need help. Like, you know, there's abused parents and kids in the foster system, blah, blah, blah. I did internships for the first like year, and I came home crying like all the time. Couldn't do it. Like, it's too hard. It's too difficult. And they get paid nothing. So not going to happen. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be like a music attorney, right? My degree is in music. And I could be an attorney and then like be a foot in both worlds and like help those people out. Then we started copyright class. Do you remember copyright class?
I do remember copyright.
This is like my running joke. Like, did you go to class? No. And then we got into copyright class and we learned about music copyright and music litigation. And I was like, I cannot believe that this is the state of music litigation in our country. It's so messed up and so disconnected from what music is that I was like, I can't do this. There's no way.
I mean, I'll be honest, when you, like, for this episode, you kind of, like, proposed some ideas, and you said Ed Sheeran, and I'm like, all right, I don't like her. This is going to be boring. But I was like, I was reading the article, and I think this is, like, one of the more fun, like, kind of cases that we got to read
There's
up
just
on.
so many. I mean, I like read through the thing and I like had things about it, but I'm fully prepared to like just go off.
Let's go off. Let's do
Okay.
it. What's it about? Who's
So let's
suing who?
start. I mean, it's a bit complicated. So there's the heir of Marvin Gaye's co-writer. So there was like Marvin Gaye, and then there was another person who was his co-writer, and it's that person's daughter.
Yes.
Who is bringing this case on behalf of his estate. And they're saying that the Thinking Out Loud song that Ed Sheeran did infringed upon Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Do you know the Let's Get It On?
I do. I didn't know the Ed Sheeran one, so I honestly had to look up the Ed Sheeran song to
I didn't know it either.
The Marvin Gaye one, I thought I knew in my head, but I also listened to it, and...
Okay, let's not even... Okay, let's lay out the facts more. Okay, but we already have your opinion. So this is a New York jury
Okay.
in United States District Court. So we had talked about before, yes, there's state courts, blah, 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 but there are federal district courts, which is like the first court in this whole system.
Okay.
That's the U.S. District Court, and they did it in New York. What's interesting about this is it was a jury. You could have a case where it's heard just by a judge, right? And then the judge decides or whatever. This case had a whole jury, which means that people had to sit here and listen to this music and listen to all this testimony and then make a decision.
And when you have a jury, you request the jury, correct? Or how does that work?
Good question.
I don't do litigation. I forgot that.
I don't do litigation either. But from what I remember, you request a jury.
Okay.
And then you have to do all the voir dire. Oh my God. Side note. Have you been watching The Jury?
No.
No, I told you to watch The Jury, right?
You did. I tell you watch lots of things, and you ignore me.
Yeah, but I don't have time for all that.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I watch things when I'm on the treadmill. And I'm like, are you on the treadmill like 10 hours a day?
No.
Exactly. So you're not watching all these things on the treadmill.
I'm doing prep for our podcast. Thank you very much.
Anyway, The Jury's really good. It's on Amazon Prime. It's like everybody in there is an actor except for one guy who doesn't know it is. And they like put them through a whole shenanigans. It's basically like The Office meets like an improv courtroom scene.
Okay.
It's I've only gotten like 4 episodes in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really great.
And are they listening to Ed Sheeran? And
They are not
Marvin
listening
Gaye?
to Ed
Okay.
Sheeran. The only tie-in was The Jury. So thank you.
So what is this jury?
Okay, so Ed Sheeran had testified that he had no more than a passing familiarity with the Let's Get It On song, and he was more inspired by his grandparents and their relationship, and then a new romantic relationship that he had found. But at trial, a musical expert had testified that the 4-chord sequence in question had been used in a number of songs before Marvin Gaye's 1973 hit. So, I mean, go back to your like meh about the similarity of it.
Okay, so I listened to both songs, and it wasn't readily apparent to me that Ed Sheeran was copying Marvin Gaye to the point that it required a lawsuit. Then as I was like reading into it about these chords, and I don't really know what chords are, but so as like a layperson, I was listening, and yeah, it didn't make sense. And it seems that a defense to copyright infringement is original creation on your own, and Ed Sheeran is saying that that's what happened. He created this song on his own, but he was also caught like at a concert kind of like doing a mashup of both songs.
So here's the thing, is that popular music is in large part the same. I'll say everything from the 40s to now follows a very similar structure, right? Things are changing nowadays because songs are getting shorter or whatever, but it's like you have an intro, a chorus, a verse, chorus, probably some like modulation, then chorus again, right? Some like you'll do some other thing and then come back. That's how it was like as we were growing up or whatever. So that's like the song structure total. And then underneath that is like what the chord progressions are. So chords are series of notes, or not series of notes, like notes piled on top of each other, basically. Okay. So you play like a C and an E and a G together. That is a C major chord, right?
Sure.
I'm trying to explain it what it is. So it's a C major chord. And you can go from like a C to a D, blah, 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 blah. The chord progression that they were talking about here is 1, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Literally since classical music, like I'm talking Bach, like we're not like pre-Mozart, like we're like way over here. They were using 1, 4, 5 chord progressions. Like literally everything is like bum, 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 like everything, right? It's found everywhere. They're trying to be like, oh, well, Marvin Gaye and his co-writers added in a 3 in there. They did 1, 3, 4, 5, 1. Okay, girl, that's, first of all, that's not genius. Like, you added another extra chord in there. Like, okay, cool. And then they were trying to say, like, oh, well, here's proof that nobody had used that chord sequence before Marvin Gaye. And I'm like, no. How many people have used it after Marvin Gaye? Everybody. Like, you know what I mean? This is just like something like art develops and you start doing it. It's like, oh, Queen start using lace front wigs, and then now everybody starts using lace front wigs.
Yeah, it's like a trend or like a feature of a genre.
Yes, it's not like something that it's the building blocks of the song. You know what I mean? It's like saying, oh, somebody takes that chord structure where it's like chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, and then it's like, oh, well, that's mine and you can't copy it now.
Yeah, I mean, we've had lots of conversations, you and I, about copying and sampling, and to me, you're very anti-sampling. You're like, why don't you just recreate the original sound? But in this case, this is exactly what they're doing. They're not sampling and taking a snippet of the other song and playing it. They're taking the snippet and kind of copying it, and they're not even copying it chord for chord. No, like I was going back. Do you know like the other Marvin Gaye case that like relates to this about blurred lines?
Yes.
So the Marvin Gaye estate sued Robin Thicke and Pharrell pretty much for the same exact thing.
Yes.
That case went to a jury, and the jury decided that there was copyright infringement for basically copying the vibe of the song.
Yes, which that case is a terrible case.
It was
an awful case because it's like the elements that they were saying that were copying the vibe were like, oh, they have cowbell on a syncopated rhythm. Girl, band pieces in middle school have cowbell on a syncopated rhythm. Like, you know what I mean? You're not special because you put it in this like track. You can't claim that you're doing cowbell on a syncopated rhythm for everything. Yeah. And they're like, oh, there was an eighth note and before every 2 and 4. It's like, okay, have you heard jazz music? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, okay, I'm going to like be rambling this whole time. But like, the thing is that like, music is such like a niche thing. Like people consume music all the time, but they don't really understand how it's made. Like the understanding of how it's made is like very few people, I feel like, understand that.
It's not me.
Even Ed Sheeran does not read music.
No.
Like, so it's like he doesn't even know how this is put together. You know what I mean? Like this person who creates music for a living doesn't even know how like music is made. So it's like, it's hard to explain to a jury what is going on. And then you can only do it with like a limited amount of resources. And because of like some other crazy rules, I don't know if you read, they were only able to play the new music, but they had to show sheet music for the old music.
Yeah, it had something to do with the original Marvin Gaye song was under a different copyright act. Yes. Where they could only submit, I think, the sheet music, whereas Ed Sheeran is under the modern copyright act. It could submit the audio of the song. Which
is like, okay, just get this. The jury's looking at a piece of sheet music. You're not going to know what the fuck that means.
No.
So it's going to take a lot of time for this lawyer to like really explain what is on this sheet music for people to get it. And then you compare it to what? Not another piece of sheet music. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to, it's useless to even like present it because it's like, why are you even going to show them this when what they're listening to later is not any different? And another fact is like, you're presenting sheet music for this. Bitch, Ed Sheeran doesn't even know how to read this shit.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that like the jury selection was not allowed to have music experts.
They had
I think one guy that was almost a professor, but I feel like most people.
No, there was one who was. So first of all, this article that we read was very, very good. It was in the New Yorker, and it was like very detailed about it. It had like little snippets of all the cases and everything. So go find that. But they even followed like who the jurors were, and one of them was a student of musicology. Musicology is a study of like how music is put together. But and they dismissed him. But there were other people who were like, oh, I do. There was a lawyer on there, which I was like, I would die to be on this case.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, the evidence presented is like, what's the point? You know what I mean?
I think it's important to highlight that the jury they're not people that are reading sheet music or know how to interpret it. And people that know how to do that were specifically excluded because there could have been a bias.
Yes. Which...
So I listen, like, the blurred lines in the other Marvin Gaye song, when you're listening to those, it does sound exactly the same. And I could see how a jury could be like, oh, this is copied, even though it was like the genre or the vibe of the song was copied. The Ed Sheeran one, not so much. I don't know music. Like, I don't know chords. I wouldn't be that type of person to know what they're talking about. But, like, I think of horror movies. Horror movies always reference other horror movies.
Yes.
You recreate scenes, you borrow character names, you recreate tropes of like running up the stairs or the car engine doesn't start. And one horror movie creator doesn't sue the other being like, girl, that little snippet right there, you copied that for yours and you're profiting off of it. And I kind of see the same with music. It's like certain tropes and genres are created and then replicated, but just because they mirror each other doesn't mean it's copying.
Yeah, I mean, this is like why... I mean, I think Ed Sheeran was like quoted saying like, if I lose this, I'm just going to quit music, because he's like, it's just stifling creativity and blah, blah, blah. But that's like why they say it's stifling creativity, because it's like, if you cannot reference anything,
right?
You know what I mean? Then it's like nothing is original. Like you literally cannot make something without the building blocks that it's necessary. You know what I mean? Like, and for the horror genre, you need a horror person. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, you need jump scares. You need like all these things. But it's like, in music, you're good. You only have. Here's the other thing too. We're gonna do is that like now music litigation is just boiled down to just melody, like lyrics, and I think that's it, and like rhythms. That's it. So it's like they try to boil it down to be like, oh, these are the essential things and blah, blah, blah. No. Like, you know what I mean? Melodies can be 90% the same and still be very different. And there's arguments that can easily be made for one or the other, right? So if you have, like, say, ABCD, like somebody plays ABCD, right? And somebody plays ACDB. Okay, we took that derivative, but, like, you created your own separate thing about it. It's not like you could do it. So you can argue that, oh, they were inspired by ABCD to create ACDB or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But it's at the same time, you're like, no, I'm using these essential 4 notes to make this melody that I need to do. And there's so much more to a piece of music than just the melody, the rhythm, and the lyrics. You know what I mean?
Not exactly. Not technically.
Okay,
but yes.
Well, there's more like, what is the instrumentation? Like, is this a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, right? The song.
Mm-hmm.
It's dun 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 dun, right? If we change it and we're like da 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 da, now we have jazz.
Okay.
Right? So we're doing it in a different style than we had done it. If we did it before, we're doing it like with the guitars. Now we're doing it with like saxophones and French horns or whatever. Like, there's so many different things that you could be done, even with the same melody, that even if it is the same melody, it's completely different.
I thought it was interesting that, because there's this idea that if you're able to create something on its own, you're not copying someone. And kind of before streaming services and before the internet, that argument, it was easy to be like, oh, how could I have ever heard this song from this obscure artist and be influenced them? But now everything's online, everything's streaming. Like, your access to these kind of obscure songs by obscure artists is more likely to happen. Or if it's not even you, it could be someone on your team. It could be someone on your
Yes.
team that is listening to an artist and is influenced by them and then brings those elements into the conversation.
So you are getting into like what other things that I wanted to talk about was this idea of subconscious copying, which in this alone, I was like, I'm not going to be a fucking music attorney. Because it's like, they're saying that you can copy subconsciously. Like somehow it got into your brain and then you did it. There is a likelihood that two people create the same melody. Like that could happen. There's only a certain amount of notes, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, that could happen. But to me saying like, oh, you heard it in a mall one time when you were parking. And so like, that's why you did it now. No, like, come on.
Yeah.
And so now, like, especially with, like you said, like with social media and stuff, it's like, oh, you might be going through your feed and you hear a song or whatever, and then it sticks in your brain. I think it's like called cryptomnesia or something. It's like a forgotten memory that is supposed to be mistaken for an original thought. Come on. Like, you got to give me way more than that to say that somebody was copying. You know what I mean? That alone, I was like, this is so dumb. So that was only one case in a particular district. It's not like the law of the land for everybody, but still, like,
Yeah, I forgot who it was, but they were basically saying that like the song came to them in a dream and they were inspired by their dream. But then the counter argument was, are your dreams influenced by things around you that you kind of just soak in that you're not familiar with?
And I think I want to go back to like when you were saying Ed Sheeran was playing all these songs like together, like in a mashup.
Yeah.
I think you were trying to use that as evidence for like the fact that he was copying.
I wasn't using it as evidence for the fact he was copying, but he can't say that he's not familiar with the Marvin Gaye song and then know to sing it. I guess maybe after the fact, he could have been like, oh, these songs are similar. Like, I guess he has a practice of mashing up songs and like going through like 5 different songs. And I don't think 2 songs being able to mash up or being so similar that they pair together is indicative of copying. I mean, we have whole like dance parties that are based around mashups.
To me, that is direct evidence of the fact that all of these songs are built on the same foundation. Like, all of them. You know what I mean? It's like DNA. It's like 90% of the structure of these songs are going to be the same. Like, that is what it is.
Or at least to make them popular, right? Because you want music and sounds that appeal to the broadest like selection of people, and that limits what you can play.
Yep. I forget. I'll think about it. But there's like certain trends that happen too. It's like, this is why you hear 80s music and you think of like synth, and like you hear disco and you think of like, you know, a certain beat or whatever. It's like, this is the genre that we've created by adding these things into them. You know what I mean? Which is like why Blurred Lines was such a stupid case, because it's like, God, you know, you can't just do it. But I think the main difference is that in the Blurred Lines case, he admitted like, oh, I love this song. This is like one of my favorite songs ever or whatever. So he's like, okay, cool. Ed Sheeran, on the other hand, was like, I don't even know. Like, I know the song, I guess, but like, you know what I mean? I'm not thinking about it when I'm writing the song.
I still don't buy that. Again, I don't really know music that well, but like going back to movies, you could love a movie and want to basically retell that story in your own way and like pay homage to it and like copy like certain details and characteristics of it. But it's your movie, it's your song.
Yeah.
It's inspired by, not necessarily like appropriating.
Yeah. I think, oh God, there's just so much wrong.
So ultimately, like the jury decided that, not just Sam Smith, who we were talking about, Ed Sheeran did not copy. But it seems like it kind of boils down to who's listening to your case. It doesn't seem like there's any like standard of law that was created.
And there's been a couple of those like, oh, well, we're not like, how are we supposed to know? And blah, 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 blah. It's like, first of all, you need attorneys who know what's going on. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that large article, we found out that the attorney representing the woman is a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah.
And he's just decided, oh, I'm going to do a copyright case, which is like, okay, fine, like challenge yourself or whatever. But like, okay, girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I guarantee you all these lawyers that are doing music litigation don't know anything about what they're talking about. And it's like, how are you going to teach the jury about this and all that kind of stuff? I think this is me being a music snob. But you don't see copyright litigation in classical music.
Would it be public domain though?
No, like
No.
classical music can be contemporary.
Oh, okay.
So it's like if somebody makes an opera right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like the Game of Thrones soundtrack, the score.
Yes. Yes. We'll call movie soundtracks. Movie soundtracks. Nobody's litigating movie soundtracks because these are distinctly original. Every single one of them is sourced from the person's, you know what I mean? I should say there's, not that there hasn't been any litigation about it, but it's like, what I'm trying to get at is like popular music is, or pop music is less creative.
It's formula.
It's formula. It's like we do a certain thing and here, and like I said, music is changing now. Like with TikTok and stuff, it's becoming shorter. Like tracks are like now 2 minutes 20 seconds. It used to be like 3 minutes 50 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever. And like so things are changing. So the song structure is going to change, but like it's all going to be pretty within the same realm. You know what I mean? Movie scores are completely unique. And nobody's really doing that anymore. Like the things that I think of is like Queen. Like, has Queen ever been subject to litigation? Not that I know of. Like, every track is original. You know what I mean? So it's like, to me, you could do a better job and you can make it yourself, like the sampling.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that like Queen though, like played with different genres and played with different sounds. So like, if we're going kind of back to the blurred lines definition where you can have protection over a genre or a style, Queen could have potentially gotten, like, there's this thing called Love kind of sounds like an old like Elvis song if you think about it.
It does.
Like, could the Elvis estate come and be like, hey, you're copying Elvis's style?
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't. No, I agree. I shouldn't. I feel like these are all just kind of tropes of a genre,
Yeah.
whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's tropes of reality television. You create a structure that people that can then play with,
Yeah.
and like create variations on the little details inside.
So we'll end by I'll ask a question and answer it first, and you can decide to answer if you want. But for me, what do I need to see for it to be copying or like copyright infringement?
Mm-hmm.
I need to see like substantial similarity. Like, I need to see a very similar rhythm, a very similar melody, very similar even subject, you know? Like, we're talking like 85% of this is pretty much exactly the same.
Yep.
That's what I want. I would be convinced with like nothing less than that.
For me, I would start with that. That would be like the first. Mine would be like a 2-pronged test. Mine would be give it to the layperson, like me, let them listen to it, and let that person determine whether they sound the same. And if that person's like, no, these sound like two different things, or I'm not seeing it, then it's settled. If they're like, hey, it does sound similar, or I could see the copying, then I think that's when you bring in the musical experts and you look at the musical structure. And unless the musical structure is exactly the same, copy paste, then I don't think it's infringing. I think if you're copying the vibe or you're copying the style or the genre, then I think you're fine.
I think when it comes down to it, I'm looking for copying. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not inspiration. So that's where we are. Let us know what you think, though, about Ed Sheeran in the comments. Do you
About the Ed Sheeran case, we all know what you think about Ed Sheeran. We don't need to know that.
Oh, yeah. I like looked up a picture of him. I was like, oh, this is what he looks like? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I like the one song he does with Taylor Swift.
I didn't even know he does a song with Taylor. I have no idea. This is like talking completely like without.
Side note, he is one of the richest men in the UK. His tours are super successful, and he has like.
Oh, that's right, because he doesn't have like sets and like all the things. It's just like him and his guitar, huh?
Yeah, copying people. That was actually I thought it was kind of snarky when we were reading. Because he creates all these songs. He can create multiple songs in a session, and someone's like, yeah, because you're just copying from other songs, and it makes it super easy for you.
He has started recording his creative sessions, which I think is the smartest thing to do.
Yes.
Because it's like, you have full record. I sat here, I diddled this on the piano. I guess you couldn't say with subconscious copying, but anyway, that's stupid. But let us know what you think about the Ed Sheeran litigation, and we will see you next week for another episode of Reading is Fundamental.
Bye.
Because reading is what?
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Reading is Fundamental.
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you the show for free. As a reminder, Reading is Fundamental is brought to you by Fleshbot.com, the leading resource for gay erotica.
DM us with your comments, questions, and let us know what you want to hear.
Or you can email us at readingisfundamentalpodcast@gmail.com.
Until next time,
Remember to read your damn contracts. Why?
because reading is what?
Fundamental.
Fundamental.
Fundamental.